Pipeline 5 starts in Superior, Wisconsin. It crosses 645 miles with a 30-inch diameter. Pipeline 5 maneuvers from Michigan's Upper Peninsula to the Lower Peninsula. It separates into two 20-inch diameter pipes. It continues its voyage under the Straits of Mackinac for 4.5 miles, carrying 540,000 barrels a day of natural gas, liquids which contents include propane along with light synthetic crude, as well as light crude oil. Pipeline 5 is responsible for the majority of the propane distribution in the Upper Peninsula. It provides heat for upwards of 85% of the homes located in the Upper Peninsula, as well as northern Michigan. Line 5 products also play a role in the heating of business, fuel vehicles, and the power industry in Michigan.
Enbridge has always been a company that generates, transports, and distributes energy since its inception in 1949. Enbridge has been in operation for over 65 years, but the company has only been known as Enbridge since October of 1988. Before electing to combine the words energy and bridge to create their name, they were in Provincial Pipeline Company, or more simply IPL Energy. The company operates the largest crude oil and liquids transportation system not only in North America, but also the largest on a global scale, thanks to their assets in Canada. In the company's infancy, 30.6 million barrels of oil were transported in their first year, equating to 83,000 barrels a day in 1949. Today, they oversee a staggering average of 2.2 million barrels of oil delivered every day, for a total of nearly 803 million barrels delivered annually. Most who think of Enbridge don't realize that the company is actually actively fighting the current worldview of oil companies as uncaring, pollutant machines. Currently, the company is ranked on the list of the Global 100 most sustainable companies in the world. This accolade is not accomplished by chance. In fact, Enbridge's efforts can be further validated by noting its appearance on the list for the past 8 years consecutively. Their mission statement reads, "As an energy company, Enbridge recognizes that we have a responsibility to address climate change. We also recognize that this responsibility extends beyond compliance with regulatory requirements to include a proactive approach to reducing our own carbon footprint, as well as working more broadly with others to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across production, transportation, and end use in the energy value chain as a whole."
Enbridge and Michigan have reached an agreement on the matter of Line 5 and the use of the pipeline going forward. Governor Richard Snyder, as well as additional high-ranking Michigan lawmakers, reached the agreement with Enbridge Corporation and agreed on a multi-layer proposed deal at the end of November. The state of Michigan is first demanding that Enbridge replace the segment of Line 5 that runs underneath the St. Clair River. The replacement pipe will be encased in a structure comparable to a tunnel that will house the new portion of Line 5 that rests under the water's surface. Line 6B has had prior success with a similar pipeline construction a few years ago. The new tunnel will be in the same general site. The St. Clair River is an especially environmentally sensitive location along the pipeline, as well as the river being an important source of drinking water. Enbridge has further been asked to undertake a study that will be done alongside the state of Michigan. The study will focus on the pipeline, by either placing a new pipeline in or taking the existing dual pipelines in a tunnel beneath the Straits of Mackinac. It will be the best interest of all parties involved to temporarily suspend any operations of Line 5 in the Straits at any point that sustained inclement weather conditions arise. The reason this agreement was reached was centered around safety. The adverse weather conditions would not allow potential responders to be as effective in combating the spill. This inclement weather plan would come into effect once a small craft advisory is placed on the Great Lakes. In regards to the recent agreement, we feel that it is a thoughtful and intelligent decision by both parties to pursue the use of a tunnel encasing the high-risk pipeline areas. The use of technology is also a positive choice. In today's society, we see the use of technology consistently around us. In critical areas along the Straits of Mackinac, it would be useful to implement cameras to monitor and ensure no leaks become present. We feel that there are additional policy procedures that should be implemented at the state's request. First, we would request that a critical response team be placed near the Straits of Mackinac, as well as along the Highway US 2, where a spill may occur. The execution of this proposal would require a response team of contractors put on retainer, the purpose being to immediately respond in case of an environmental disaster.
These members would have monthly training meetings similar to volunteer firefighters. The on-call task force would be reimbursed for their time in the annual training. Having a team on standby would allow for permanent positions and thus long-term payout and economic benefits to those involved.
We would also request that the state place a tax on Enbridge for the use of land. The state would then be required to create a trust with the tax, which may only be used in the event of mitigating environmental disaster.
Short-term and long-term implications need to be taken into consideration when offering a new policy plan. If a rupture were to occur anywhere along the pipe, especially in the Upper Peninsula or under the Straits of Mackinac, the environmental impacts would be astronomical. Projections from the University of Michigan indicate that if a leak were to occur, multiple different outcomes are possible when factoring in seasonal currents and wind patterns. Currents in the straits are oscillating in nature, meaning that every few days the currents change directions. This leaves the water in a state of unrest and continuously in motion, churning up particles and pushing them in all directions. Due to this oscillating nature, a rupture in Line 5 for only a short 12 hours would be next to impossible to contain in one manageable location. The best of these outcomes limits the spill to only the shorelines of Michigan, while the worst projections have the spill reaching to Wisconsin and parts of Canada. The suggestion of an encasement around the pipe in a high-risk area such as the Straits is an attempt to create another barrier between the oil that runs in the lines and the churning waters above it. Consideration for the short and long-term implications must also be considered for the economic impacts of our policy suggestion. Our policy puts forth the closure of the line during inclement weather conditions until the new encasement can be constructed. If the winds on the lakes are sustained at 22 to 33 nautical knots, also known as 25 to 37 miles per hour, or if a wave height of 4 feet is sustained, a small craft advisory is issued. At this point, the water is too dangerous for a team to attempt cleanup if a leak were to occur. To put this in perspective, a video was taken by Captain Greg Baywall aboard the Shepler's freight vessel, the Sacre Blue, on December 5th. Depicted below, wind and sea conditions on the back half of Mackinac Island were reaching a sustained gust of 30 to 40 miles per hour, with highs seen at 55 miles per hour, while wave heights were around 6 to 8 feet. Spray can be seen reaching heights similar to a second-story building. Captain Baywall promised that the sea conditions were much worse in the bridge channel that day. If Pipeline 5 ruptured during these conditions, the oil plume would spread quickly, ruining miles of habitat and harming local species of wildlife. A containment crew could not be deployed in these conditions. Short term, this does impact the profit that is made from the use of the line during these times. However, the cost of a long-term cleanup projects to be much higher than the revenue that would be lost during the closure times. Pipeline solutions face opposition from both sides of the debate. One side claims that the regulations are already taxing enough on the industry, and introducing more would raise the price of oil to obscene costs. The other side claims that the pipeline should never be in use, as the risk of any leakage is not worth the payoff. When defending a policy solution, one must have a rebuttal for both parties, as finding neutral ground in this topic is next to impossible. Most see Pipeline 5 as a black and white issue where there is no gray ground. Individuals and corporations will argue that current pipeline regulations are effective. With current regulations, companies deem what is fit for continual use in underwater pipelines and deem when maintenance occurs, or in worst case scenario, when a new line needs to be laid. No one stands to lose more money than Enbridge itself in regards to a leak in Pipeline 5. On July 26, 2014, Enbridge was responsible for the largest inland oil spill in the United States history. Line 6B, an offshoot of Pipeline 5, ruptured late at night and remained active for 17 hours before authorities called to have the line shut down. This mistake has cost Enbridge over $1 billion to date and is still being cleaned up 3 years later. While some on this side would argue that Pipeline 5 creates long-term jobs, that is not entirely true. The retention rate of these jobs is incredibly low at 0.1%. For example, in regards to the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline, a total of 42,015 jobs would be temporarily created for the construction, according to the United States Department of State Bureau of International Environmental and Scientific Affairs. However, these jobs are short-lived, and upon the completion of the pipeline, only 50 jobs will remain as permanent positions. Irma Seisman, in the journal article Pipeline Politics, argues that the pipeline dispute is not a debate on pipeline safety or the risks to the direct environmental impacts at all. Seisman argues that the politicism surrounding the issue can be tracked back to the general politicism of fossil fuels. This correlation can be drawn to those that are in opposition of Pipeline 5. The argument is made that people can fight the consumption of fossil fuels at its root and see little gain. However, if they fight the offshoot of fossil fuels, or in our case the transportation method, they will see more progress to their cause. We are seeking to avoid as much backlash as possible from these groups that feel the complete elimination of Pipeline 5 is needed. This is not a realistic approach and stands to cause more of an environmental impact than its current situation. Finding an alternative to Pipeline 5 capable of moving the amount of oil needed safely is currently not feasible with today's technology. Railway transportation is the second largest method of transporting mass oil in the United States. Most believe that switching to a completely rail-based system is the solution to the environmental challenges pipelines face. This mode of transportation has a higher failure rate and stands to impact the environment more than a traditional oil pipeline. It was found that in 2013, oil pipelines larger than a foot in diameter spilled a total of 910,000 gallons of petroleum products. This may sound terrible, but the number grows to 1.15 million gallons spilled by tank cars.
The Tuesday prior to Thanksgiving Day, Enbridge and state lawmakers came to terms on this policy behind closed doors. Though there has been backlash by locals, it is our group's belief that this is the best and most sensible policy plan going forward. We do, however, maintain that adding a response team to critical locations along the pipeline, as well as creating a trust, would be beneficial. With this plan, we believe surrounding Great Lakes communities can find comfort in the new transparency as well as accountability created by this proposal.